Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my site softer?
Can I make my site firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. It's the Sleep Number biggest sale of the year. All beds on sale up to 50% off the limited edition smart bed. Plus free premium delivery with any smart bed and adjustable base. Ends Labor Day. All Sleep Number smart beds offer temperature solutions for your best sleep. Check it out at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com today.
Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Hour 2, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, be with us in 15 minutes. Chris spent some time at Clemson, so we'll talk to him about what LSU can expect from that atmosphere and talk a little football with Chris. Time to talk some Saints with Luke Johnson of The Advocate down there in New Orleans. Saints off the practice field, so let's get some time with Luke. We appreciate it. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Let's talk about the decision to name Spencer Rattler the starting quarterback. You surprised? You thought that was coming? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought it was coming. I thought that late in training camp, I thought Tyler Shuck was really making a push for the job. But by the time things wrapped up, I think it was still pretty clear that, taking the whole thing in totality, that Rattler had earned the opportunity to start. And I know a lot of people have kind of looked at that as saying, it's already a sign that, Tyler Shuck is a failed draft pick or whatnot. I just think that's just kind of a load of BS, in my opinion. I mean, we see rookies sit early all the time. People do it with top 5 draft picks. They did it with Drake May last year, and he wasn't, suddenly like not a good player because he was sitting behind Jacoby Brissett. I mean, it's obviously a completely different situation with Spencer Rattler being a young player, with him being a 5th-round pick versus Tyler Shuck being a 2nd. But I think that his experience really helped him in that quarterback competition. I think we saw a different player this year than we saw last year. One who's more decisive, more confident, and he earned the shot. I don't think it's going to be like 17 games of Spencer Rattler this year, though. Especially if they struggle, like they got to see what they have in Tyler Shuck because they might be right back in the quarterback business again next year if they don't feel like they have any great options. So it's there's some complicated parts to this, but I think it's the decision that we all expected them to make.
How do you feel like they handled the reps, the preseason games, and the timeline of the decision, and ultimately the decision they made?
I mean, it was all. I mean, from a rep standpoint, it was remarkably even. I think Spencer got a lot more time. Or days rather, where he was like the first quarterback out, right? But they did a lot of, where it'd be days where, Spencer Rattler started with the 1s, but then they'd do these long team periods where Shuck was working with the first team instead of Rattler. So when you looked at how it all evened out, they had a pretty similar amount of attempts, like pass attempts during training camp and the practices that we charted every single one of those. Very similar amount of work in the preseason. Obviously, Spencer got 2 starts versus 1 for Shuck, but you can't really avoid that with 3 preseason games. So, all in all, I think it was they both got similar opportunities. As for the timing, I mean, they were the last team in the NFL to name a starting quarterback, but Spencer Rattler knows he's the guy with a week and a half before the regular season game. I think that's plenty of time. Sure, it would have been nice to have it known before that last preseason game, you can really kind of start building from there. But I don't think they had to rush this. I think they played it right and they gave themselves as much time as they needed to make the right decision and go from there.
How'd you feel about the moves on the roster, the 53?
I think they're a better team right now, than they were at the beginning of training camp. Right, I really, you can argue if you want with the price they paid for Devon Bailey for a guy who's going to be 28. this year, giving up a 4th-round pick. If they are picking in the top 5, that's like a top 105 pick next year. But like, if he goes out and gives you 60 catches for the next 3 years of his rookie contract, that seems like pretty good value for a 4th-round pick. He adds like an element to this offense that they didn't have. And like, again, this is like something that we've talked about for years. Like, they needed to add something like that to this offense. And you can criticize them, and I have, for waiting until 2 weeks before the season to address it and having to give up a draft pick for it. But they got a pretty good player out of that. They had a lot of injuries on the offensive line, particularly on the interior. They lost 3 of their kind of key depth pieces for the season to injuries. But like, I don't know how big a drop off there is between like Landon Young and Awesome Richards, who they traded for from the Cowboys. I don't know how big of a drop off there is from Will Clapp to Luke Fortner. I think they're in a position where, like most NFL teams, like they are hoping and praying their 5 makes it through the season mostly healthy. Offensive line depth is kind of an issue around the league. So they addressed it in the way they needed to, I think. So like, I'm saying all this stuff. I know I'm sounding kind of optimistic and maybe a little Pollyanna-ish about the Saints right now. I still don't think they're going to be very good this year, but I do like the direction they're heading, if that makes sense.
Was there a cut that surprised you?
Not really. I know the Isaiah Foskey one and the Jake Haener one, both got a lot of attention. I think neither of those were even remotely surprising, though. Like, I think I'm more surprised than anything that Jake is back on the practice squad. He seemed like a player that could have used a kind of a fresh start. It's pretty clear here that, there's like, they use a 4th-round draft pick on him, but there's 2 guys ahead of him in the pecking order who were both drafted after him. He's probably lost his opportunity forever here to be like a starting player for this franchise. Yeah. But I wasn't really surprised. I would have been like more surprised if they'd cut him last year. I mean, maybe there would have been a little bit more interest in him on the waiver wire, but like, you had to think he was going to get through. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, he's been a very good player in practice at times, but like, he's really never ever put it together in a game. Like, I don't think you have to really worry about another team putting a claim in on him. And even if they did, like I just said, like they've already kind of committed to the 2 guys they drafted after him. So I think a lot of the guys who were let go were guys that I was kind of expecting, even if there's, kind of some noise around it, like the Foskey thing, right? Like, that was, I think, just pretty clearly like a whiff on a high draft pick on a player. But, it's saying something that he's not even back on the practice squad. Like, I think they saw everything they needed to see out of him.
As far as the draft class goes from this past year, how do you feel that group performed in camp, and who realistically can help them this year, obviously, beyond your left tackle, Banks, which is obvious?
Yeah, I mean, Banks is a stud. He's going to have some growth that needs to happen over the course of the season, but like the very early impression of him we got was really, really good. I think especially as a pass protector, like I think they found an ace with him. I think they found some really nice contributing pieces. Danny Stutzman, I think, was really impressive. Obviously, he's kind of blocked on the field right now with Mario and Pete, but if one of those guys goes down, he can give you, I think, pretty solid play there as a rookie. I was really impressed with Jonas Sanker, who, I kind of like Stutzman is blocked, but like he can contribute. I think they're going to find ways to get him on the field in like 3 safety looks. Quincy Riley, another guy, like, I think probably going to need some seasoning, but like you can see the really high level traits for him, especially like when the ball's in the air. He's an aggressive player and he knows how to make plays in the ball, which like I don't think is something you can say of all defensive backs. He's a guy who played center field in high school baseball. Like that shows up when he's out in the field. He can track the ball really well, makes plays on it. Vernon Broughton, I think, is, probably did not come along as fast as they were hoping. They went out and got some veteran D-line pieces. I think they were kind of hoping he'd be a starting player for him. That's just not what it's going to be right away. But we'll kind of see how that goes. And yeah, I mean, look, they had a big draft class, and all those guys, with the exception of their last pick, Fadil Diggs, made the 53. So like, even though I think Banks, and obviously Tyler Shuck, like we've talked about him ad nauseum, I think those two are probably the only two who are going to play like major roles for the team this year. But I do think they found some guys who can help them in the future, and that's like super important for this team because they have just for a long time, just a dearth of young impact players.
I know y'all generally do a media poll of how things are going to go this year. What's your thought on the record for the Saints this year? We'll get into actual game next week.
Yeah, I picked 6-11, and I was telling some people out here, like I made that pick, like Jeff Duncan accumulates that list every year, and I sent him my record pick like the very first day he sent that poll out like 3 weeks ago, and I kind of wish I would have waited until the end of the preseason. So I'd probably go a little bit lower. I think the quarterback thing is gonna hold them back this year. I have a hard time seeing this offense kind of consistently score points, like enough to like really consistently win games. But I still do feel really good about the direction for the future. Like I think this year is just going to be a wash. But I've been really impressed by Kellen Moore. I think Brandon Staley has the goods as a defensive coordinator. Like, a lot of guys who fail as head coaches, they're defensive-minded head coaches. They go back into that coordinator role and they succeed. I think Staley's going to be one of those guys. And like some of the other pieces are intriguing. I think they got good skill position players. I think they got potentially a really good offensive line. Like that's stuff that raises the floor, but it's just the quarterback play. I think it's just going to be way too inconsistent for them to really be a factor.
Perfectly reasonable. It's just a big hurdle to jump, but hopefully one of those guys steps forward and makes some plays. Is your alma mater going to get it done on Saturday night?
Oh. Yeah, man. Can they just please play like Sam Houston week 1?
I would love
sometime. Just like stop giving me a heart attack in week 1, or make me want to like longingly look at the Crescent City connection from my house. No, I don't think they're going to get it done. I don't think they're going to get it done, but I do think maybe they could do the thing that they've done in the last couple of years, where they give me a little bit of hope for the playoff before they rip my heart out again in October. But we'll see.
We will certainly see. We'll talk about the Saints in a real game next week. Thanks, Luke.
Sounds good, buddy. See you.
By Luke Johnson on Twitter for all your Saints news with us every Thursday. Appreciate a little bit of his time on this Thursday, which means you're brought to you by Sagrera Farms. When we come back, voice of the Tigers, Chris Blair next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carver and his team, phenomenal folks to work with, especially if you're trying to get into a captive. If you are a business owner or you're in charge of the insurance at your company and you feel like you're paying a pretty penny and you feel like your loss management is really good, your risk management is very good, your loss history is very good, well, you might fit into a captive. If your broker hasn't shown you a captive, they may not have access to a captive. But the Highland Insurance Group does, and they want to help you with that. It could be a game changer for your bottom line as far as insurance costs go. So if you're a business, you spend a lot on insurance, you'd like a more creative solution that you have not recently gotten, call Jonathan Carver and the Highland Insurance Group and say, hey, tell me about this captive thing. Can we sit down and chat about it? They work with them every single day. You may be a fit, and it may be a game changer for you. It's the Highland Insurance Group. They're right here in Baton Rouge, but certainly you can find them online at HighlandIG.com. Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
It is game week. Looking for something to do this evening? Get on by TJ Ribs. Katie and Thruway, the Brian Kelly Show, coming at you 7 o'clock. You want to listen to it, you can on our sister station, Eagle 98.1. I know one guy will be there, Chris Blair, the voice of the Tigers. He's with us on Thursdays. Joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Chris, how we doing?
Hey, hon, I'm doing good, man. Yeah, that's the plan, to be there at 7 o'clock tonight.
What are you going to ask the coach?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk a lot about Clemson. Last week we had kind of a, additional preseason show, kind of talking a lot about LSU. Having no game to go back and review for this season is going to give us an opportunity to really get some thoughts from Coach on what he sees when he sees this Clemson team. We touched on it a little bit last week, which was mainly, the offense is pretty much intact as far as your playmakers are concerned. I know Clemson's, at least reports, out of the upstate of South Carolina. So some offensive line, maybe some injuries there. Not sure yet, but the defense obviously going to be different. We got a lot of the same players, but with Tom Allen taking over, we touched a little bit on that last week. But we'll dig in a little more about Clemson, and not only about Clemson, but what LSU's got to do with their personnel and their scheme to try to be successful Saturday night.
You do your Hearing Voices podcast with the opposing voice, and you got a chance to talk to the voice of Clemson earlier this week. What'd you learn about the vibes there upstate in South Carolina?
Yeah, they're pretty fired up. I mean, I asked him, I've got friends, obviously Don, who was our guest this week, Don Munson, was a mentor of mine. I worked with Don for 5 years over at Clemson. And I asked him, I said, look, I know what it's like. I was lucky enough to be at the Bowden Bowl, first one ever, Tommy and Papa Bowden. Years ago. I've been to several South Carolina Clemson games there at Memorial Stadium. I kind of asked him, what's the feeling like? It's not a neutral site game in a top 10 matchup. It's a home game. It's not South Carolina. Obviously, it's not Florida State. It doesn't have those things attached to it. But what about this matchup? And he said it's one they're anticipating. In fact, the stadium opened in 1942, I learned, and this is just the third time there's been a top 10 matchup. That's hard to believe, when you think about that to start the season. He said Coach Sweeney called for an orange out. We'll see if everybody complies. I'm just hoping there's a lot of little smatterings across the stadium of purple and gold, which I expect we'll see.
I've mentioned spent 5 years at Clemson. You kind of know what that town's about, what that stadium's about. What should LSU fans be expecting if they make the trip or if they're watching on television?
Well, I think obviously if LSU goes over there and takes care of business on, everybody will say it was a great road trip. If they don't, I don't know that there's anything any place can do that would take that bad taste out of their mouth. But I can tell you from a tailgating standpoint, it's a great place. I mean, it's a little different in the sense that it's an agricultural campus. It's kind of set out there outside of Greenville, outside of Anderson. Clemson's a very rural part of the state. So typically you can tailgate under trees and a lot of grass. Obviously the campus has grown. There's a lot of concrete, a lot of blacktop, new buildings, all of that. But it's a pretty cool place to tailgate. And they take it seriously. Not as big here as LSU, but, I would imagine there's going to be 83,000 in the stands. There'll probably be another 35,000, 40,000 that are just there, that'll be outside, just to be there at the event. So it's very similar to what LSU sees when they go on the road in the SEC. And that's one of the things I know you heard the players talk about this week in their media session. For those who haven't been there, they still kind of understand this is kind of what we do. When we play at Texas A&M, they get fired up. When we play at the Swamp, it's exciting. When we play at Alabama. So I don't think it's going to be anything that throws LSU off. It's just going to be a great atmosphere for college football. And as I said, if LSU goes over there, takes care of business, gets off to a 1-0 start, I imagine those who make the trip are going to say, hey, that was pretty cool. I wouldn't mind doing it again.
I want to talk about Gary Nussmeier. We talk about the quote-unquote leap. What do you think he needs to have worked on and do a little bit better this year than he did last year?
Well, I know this is going to come as an epiphany to everybody listening, including yourself. Take those opportunities to run when they're there. I think if you look back at last year, Hunt, not that in and of itself would have changed some of the outcomes of games, but I know you've got a great photographic memory. You probably can tell me a couple of times where if he pulls and runs, it changes that particular drive and possibly changes that particular game. So I think that's kind of what me and everybody else is looking for, is if those opportunities are there. And goodness knows Garrett has talked about it. Coach Kelly has talked about it. So I expect him to do that. I just want him to be able to do that. I think about Joe Burrow in 18 and 19, really. I wouldn't say Joe was the fleetest of feet. I wouldn't say he was a powerful runner. I think he was able to take a hit. But I think when he did, the benefit was so monumental to then be able to open up that playbook again with all of the weapons he had. So that was the one thing we were missing last year. So I think he can really improve just his overall play by adding that dimension to the game. Obviously, I think his decision-making got better last year. I expect that it will get even better this year, being judicious with the football, knowing when to make the right throw, when the window is there and when it's not.
On the defensive side, do you sense kind confidence from Brian Kelly when he talks about his defense?
Yeah, I really do. And I get that sense when you go to practice. And you watch Blake Baker, and you watch Kevin Peoples, and you watch Corey Raymond. Again, they're on these guys. They're coaching them hard, but there's a lot of slapping of the helmets. There's a lot of high fives. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because they're doing what the coaches have asked them to do. And I think you've got young players and some players who may not be young last year, but didn't have a ton of experience at this level that are obviously going to be better. And then I think, again, as we've talked about, last week, I think the transfer portal on the defensive side are giving you experienced players where now Blake Baker and the staff say, okay, guys, this is how we're going to scheme up defensively against Clemson. Here is your responsibility. And I think these players and the talent and the experience are going to allow them to go, okay, got it. Line up, let's do it.
I've got a lot of confidence in this defense. We'll see. They're getting put to a test against a really good offense coming up on Saturday night, but I think it's going to be. I think they're going to play really well, and I think it's going to be a fairly low-scoring game. Do you share that, or do you feel like these two quarterbacks are going to get into some sort of shootout?
Yeah, I'm going to take the easy answer here. I think that's a possibility. I look at Clemson's defense from a year ago, and I know Tom Allen is a new defensive coordinator. They struggled at times, especially against the run. And so part of me thinks that, it could be a low-scoring affair because I think I like both defenses. But I got to be honest, I think when you look at them on paper and go back and look at film and then see the players who are going to be in purple and gold and orange and white on the offensive side of the football, I think it's going to be hard to keep these offenses down. I don't know that means it's a 45-42 ball game. But I think there's going to be some plays made on offense. I mean, this is a very good receiving core. I kind of think LSU's got 7 to 8 legit guys who could play at this level. I think Clemson, when you look at them, they've got legit 6 guys that could go anywhere at this level and play and contribute. And then I think both quarterbacks are very, very good. So I don't know that I can go totally with the low-scoring game. Depends on what you define as low-scoring.
I think it's going to be in the low 20s. I don't think either one of these defenses is going to let somebody score 35 points. That's my read on it early. I could be dead wrong. We thought it was going to be a track meet last year in Vegas, and it was not. So you never know. But that's I think these defenses are going to show up on Saturday night.
Touche.
All right, I know I'm going to have a guy sitting next to me in BT that's going to be talking about special teams, and I know you're going to have a guy standing next to you that likes to talk about special teams, and Jacob Hester. I feel great about where LSU is with special teams, from the returners, the new punter, place kicker, and the new coach they brought in, on. And Clemson had some serious problems last year. They had 6 kicks blocked, and Gabo Sweeney said they're going to have to check out in warm-ups who the punter's going to be. So, is that a spot that you think LSU could find some benefit?
Yeah, that's the other thing that we are going to talk about LSU tonight on the show. I didn't get to it last night. Last week had so much stuff, but I did want to talk about the special teams, not just because we want to talk about them, but for the reasons you state. I think LSU has an advantage not only in this game, but I think they'll be even with the best special teams that they'll face the rest of the year, and that's because you've got a consistent guy in Damian Ramos. You got just an absolute boomer foot of Aaron Burrell on kickoffs. They're very pleased with Chadwick coming in, transferring in as punter. Even Aaron Burrell has done a pretty good job as a backup punter there. So I think from the kicking standpoint, you are going to have a new long snapper. All indications, at least to me, is they feel pretty good about it. So I think from the kicking standpoint, you'll be pretty good. Plus the fact that I'm pretty comfortable with Damian and have been 40 yards and in, but he's extended his range a little bit when it comes to field goals. So I think you're good there. And then when I look at, your receive and your return team, I mean, you're talking about Barryon Brown. He leads the NCAA or leads the SEC and leads the NCAA right now with active players. He's got 5 kickoff returns for touchdowns. We saw Aaron Anderson last year. We saw Xavier Thomas. I mean, you've got some legit playmakers out there when they get the ball in their hands. So as long as they catch the football, I think they can make some magic things happen on special teams. And, in this day and age of college football, with all the changes in the rules with kickoffs, those things I think are getting fewer and far between. And suddenly you saw LSU come to life on a couple of occasions. So I think from a special team standpoint, both the guys kicking the ball and the guys fielding the ball, you got some playmakers.
Tonight, 7 o'clock, Brian Kelly Show from TJ Ribs. You can listen to it on your LSU Sports Radio Network affiliate, Eagle 98.1 here in Baton Rouge. And whole broadcast team going to be over there in Clemson, bringing you LSU and Clemson just after 6:50 on Saturday night. Chris will be there for all of it. Thanks, Chris.
You got it. Talk to you Saturday.
Sure will. That is Chris Blair, the voice of the Tigers, incidentally. You can catch me, Brandon Taylor, and Marlon Favorite on the LSU Sports Radio Network pregame show coming up at 4:30 on Saturday, 1:30, Eagle 98.1 game day. Matt Musso and Charles Hannegriff from Rouse's. So 1:30 till after midnight, you can find us for LSU and Clemson over on Eagle 98.1. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back and reset the A.J. Haulcy news of the day. I want to talk about that again because we got recycling of audiences, so we'll reset that if you haven't heard about it. We'll do that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. This is a labor of love that's kind of turned into a business. The Sagrera family has had a farm here just outside of Baton Rouge for decades and started raising some cattle. Sean Sagrera was like, I'm just not comfortable with the beef that I'm purchasing weekly. So I'm going to change it and do it my own way. And Sean did some research, ended up understanding the technology that goes into raising cattle, ended up selling off the cows that he had because they weren't the quality that he needed, started from scratch, and has built this into an unbelievable operation just outside of Baton Rouge. Sagrera Farms, and they've got cattle on their farm just outside Baton Rouge that is some of the finest beef in the country. You're talking about genetic engineering in a 3-year process that produces prime and consistent Angus beef. It's flank steaks, it's chuck roasts, it's fillets, it's ribeyes, it's ground beef. If you want your freezer full of delicious, flavorful, incredibly marbled, tender beef, Sagrera Farms is where you need to be. We all know that not so great steak we've had, and we know that great steak that we've had. If you want a great steak every time, Sagrera Farms can help you out with that. I give you Sean's number every single week. Just got to give him a call and go up to the farm and check it out. You can see the animal that you're buying, and you can bring it home and put it in that freezer. So you give Sean a call at 225-719-1723. Again, that's 225-719-1723. It's Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. I don't do this a lot, where I kind of do the same segment 2 times in a show. It's a 2-hour show, and so generally speaking, you want to fill it with fresh content. But this is breaking news as of today, and I feel like for those that were with us at 1 o'clock that are still here at 2:36, I very much appreciate you being here. If you heard the entire first segment, you're going to hear some things that have been rehashed at this point. And I apologize for that, but there are a lot. The vast majority of our audience that's listening right now was not here at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to relitigate the A.J. Haulcy situation for those that are unfamiliar. A.J. Haulcy was ejected from Houston's regular season finale against BYU last year. There were just under 3 minutes to go in the game. BYU's quarterback scored a touchdown, and in the back of the end zone, there was a scuffle. I don't know exactly what Haulcy did in the scuffle. I have not seen that, but I do know that flags were thrown, and he was ejected from the game. The box score from that game says he was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct. And I'm reading the rule book here for college football. It says unsportsmanlike conduct, live ball fouls by players, and it says flagrant offenders, if players or substitutes, shall be ejected. So one of the unsportsmanlike conduct rules is if you're flagrant, you can be ejected. And it says dead ball contact fouls such as pushing, shoving, striking, etc., that occur clearly after the ball is dead and are not part of the game action. So it stands to reason that would make a lot of sense. There is nothing in the rule book at this point for unsportsmanlike conduct that says that the player must sit out and be suspended for the first half of the next game if the foul occurs in the second half. Just like targeting. You target in the second half, you can't play the first half of the next game, right? There's nothing that says that about unsportsmanlike conduct, which is what the box score says. Now, for fighting, if you are ejected for fighting, the rule clearly states that fighting is an ejection for the remainder of the game and the first half of the next game. And then it continues, for fighting in the last game of a season, those with remaining eligibility shall serve suspensions during the first game of the next season for which they are eligible. That would apply to Haulcy here. Houston did not play in a bowl game last year. So the regular season finale against BYU was it, and Haulcy was ejected. So my take at the top of the show today was that if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm not interpreting incorrectly, that he was ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct, I don't believe a suspension is forthcoming. If it was fighting and the box score that I'm reading is incorrect, then he is suspended, and I don't think there's any gray area about it. Like, he was ejected. Whether you like the call or not, it happened. So, to throw a wrench in this, and this is something that I did not mention at the top of the show, one of the other ejections in the game was Darius Lassiter, BYU wide receiver. He was suspended for the first half of the Alamo Bowl. Now, when I read the news story about Lassiter's suspension, it says he was ejected for unsportsmanlike conduct. So I'm doing the best I can here to read the rules black and white. I said this at the top of the show. I reported this on LouisianaSports.net. LSU was unaware of this, and the SEC was unaware of this until very recently. And I believe that Clemson called this to the NCAA's attention. And I want to be pretty clear about that. I would do the same thing. It's not like they're uncovering some secret that LSU did. The guy got ejected from the game. The rule says if you get ejected for fighting, you're suspended. He's a starter. Like, I'd probably say the same thing. You can say that's tattletaling. You can say don't do that. Like, it's pretty clear. And it's not like it's a secret. It's not a recruiting violation or impermissible benefits. Now, you can look at Tristan Lee, who's on Clemson's offensive line. You understand some things that happened in Baton Rouge, and an offensive line coach that ended up suing the school because of it. And that rooted from Clemson as well. But, like, this is, like, public stuff. It's on national TV. The guy got ejected from the game. It's pretty easy to look up. I just didn't know about it. I can blame myself. Baton Rouge media can be like, yeah, we didn't look at, like, I didn't look at whether or not A.J. Haulcy got flagged for targeting in their last game or got ejected from their last game. I had no idea. It's not in his bio. I looked at that a million times to write stories and to do segments on here. Like, I had no idea. But, like, this is not, like, malfeasance by Clemson in my estimation. Being like, hey, I think their safety got ejected. Y'all want to check on that? I don't find that to be unsportsmanlike behavior by Clemson. I find this to be a terrible break 2 days before the game for LSU if A.J. Haulcy can't play in the first half. Because as I mentioned in the first segment of the show today, like, that's a big deal. He's really good. He's going to be a starter. I think he's going to be an all-league player. I think he's going to be an enforcer on LSU's defense. And if you don't have him in the first half, that hurts because the guy that you put in for him, in my opinion, is not going to be as good as A.J. Haulcy. But this is, and I'll leave it at this for the rehashing of a segment that I did an hour and a half ago. I don't think this should take very long. Now, the NCAA is notorious for dragging their feet with eligibility stuff and red shirt stuff and all this kind of stuff that takes forever. This, to me, doesn't take a long time. You call the Big 12, you get the officiating group on the horn, you check the box score of the previous game. Why was A.J. Haulcy ejected from the game? Was it for striking an opponent, which was unsportsmanlike conduct? I think he's fine. Was it for fighting? I think he's fine. Somebody's got to have record for that. And I believe if you're Clemson or LSU, if it says unsportsmanlike conduct, he's playing. Shut up. Let's play. If it says fighting, LSU, be quiet. He sits on the sideline until halftime. I don't see how this is going to be a controversial thing, and I don't see how it would take a long time to deal with. We've got 2 days to go before a game. This ought to be done in an hour and a half. Get it done. Figure out the ruling and get it enforced. It's a bad break for LSU if it's fighting and he's got to sit. And it's a bad precedent that's been set that BYU's player has been suspended for the first half of that bowl game, or was suspended for the first half of that bowl game. I don't know what the result is going to be. But certainly if something comes up, we'll let you know over the course of the next 3 hours and 15 minutes. Matt will have AFR until 6, and he can tell you. I will tell you this. Brian Kelly will be asked about this in about 3 hours, and he will have an answer. It may be we're looking into it, but he will be asked about this. This is not something that's some sort of secret. It just has come across everyone's radar very recently. And BK will talk about it coming up at his press conference tonight after practice. Be a big loss for LSU. We'll see if that does come to pass. All right. That's resetting of the AJ Haulcy situation here as we get ready for LSU and Clemson. I am so fired up for tomorrow's show. Friday, game weekend, predictions, SEC gambling picks. Preston Guy will join us. Lots to chat about on Friday's show. But one more time, we'll come back and close out this Thursday edition Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Try the GV80. If you're got a family looking for an SUV, Genesis has not really ever been on your radar. It's understandable. They're fairly new to the game. Probably never been to the location, airline at PQ either. Put it on your list. Go by and see them. Chat with their brand ambassador. If you're sitting there listening going, I'm not going to a car dealership. Hate it there. Well, you're not going to hate it at Genesis Baton Rouge, but you don't have to go. They'll come to you. You're at work, you want a test drive, they'll come to you. You're at home, want a test drive, they'll come to you. It's just part of the service. And then once you get into that vehicle and you purchase it, they'll handle your maintenance for 3 years for free as well, and they'll do that valet style. They'll come pick your vehicle up, handle the maintenance, bring it right back to you. And meanwhile, you'll have a loaner so you can get on about your day. It's great service. Great people, phenomenal facility, unbelievable line of vehicles, as safe as any car on the road. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Go by and see them, airline at PQ. Check out the entire inventory online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef, some of the best beef in the country, just outside of Baton Rouge here. Sagrera Farms in Ethel. Give Sean a call. Get some of that Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef in your freezer quickly for football season. You're going to want to get those steaks on the grill. Thinking of doing some Sagrera Farm burgers myself. Maybe Sunday evening, perhaps Monday, pre-show. On a holiday. We'll see, but we'll be here on Monday. We're here every single Labor Day. It's in the aftermath of an LSU football game. It has been the day after the last 3 years, because LSU had played on Sunday. Saturday night kickoff, so we do get 1 day of rest there on Sunday, but we'll be back at it on Monday, hopefully in a decent mood. Either way, on tomorrow's show, as I mentioned in the last segment, we'll have Preston Guy from TigerBait.com talking about LSU and Clemson. We'll pick the SEC games against the number. We'll give you my final pick for LSU and Clemson as well. So busy show tomorrow. Very, very, very much looking forward to that. Only one more order of business left on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. That, of course, is Take It or Leave It.
Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Presented to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer, crafted by America's oldest brewery. Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. Weekend's just about upon us. You're probably watching some football tonight, certainly Friday, and of course Saturday. If you're looking to pick up some cold beers, put in the fridge, put on ice this weekend, give Flight by Yingling a try. It's all the great things you love about light beer, which is 2.6 carbs and 95 calories. Knock a few back if you'd like to, and got that great beer taste from America's oldest brewery. Check out Flight by Yuengling, the next generation of light beer.
Alrighty, first one here. The ESPN just released an article earlier today. I think this was Benjamin Solak that wrote it. Yes, Ben Solak. And he gave an X factor for every NFL team. You'll be interested to know that for the New Orleans Saints, he said Trevor Penning, which I was a bit surprised by. I would have probably expected it to be, well, he didn't probably know which quarterback it was going to be. You probably would have chosen them, but Trevor Penning as the X factor for the Saints. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave that. They certainly have an opportunity to get into a new contract if he decides to be a really good left guard. And that's a possibility. I wouldn't bet on it, but it's a possibility. X factor's got to be quarterback for the Saints, and then beyond Penning, I think it's some of the guys that are on rookie deals. They already have not picked up Penning's options, so I mean they can still certainly give him a new contract, but I think that's probably a little bit much there to suggest that he's the X factor on this team.
All right, next one. Apparently, the Dallas Cowboys are actually speaking to teams with the possibility of a trade for Micah Parsons, who has been embroiled in a contract dispute with Jerry Jones, of course.
Yes.
And no trade is imminent, apparently, but another team always could be aggressive enough to make it come together quickly, according to sources. The Cowboys trading Micah Parsons. Take it or leave it.
I will leave that.
Leave it alone.
That's a bad idea. He's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. You should probably keep him around. Same thing. The Bengals finally got a deal with Trey Hendrickson. Cowboys need to get a deal with Micah Parsons. I understand in a salary cap sport trying to jostle for position. But ultimately, when you get a guy that's that good, you need to just get the deal. And that's what Jerry Jones generally doesn't do. He drags his feet. He makes people unhappy. He generates a lot of negative press. And then the Cowboys aren't very good. And I imagine that'll probably be the case again this year.
All right, last one here. NFL bettors are expected to wager approximately $30 billion on the NFL, just the NFL, with legal sports books in the United States, according to an estimate released Thursday by the American Gaming Association. $30 billion in bets on the NFL. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I'll take it. If I've learned anything from being in this business now 100% for the last 4 or 5 years, it's that the NFL is a behemoth unlike anything else. It's so far and away trumps every other sport that we've got in this country. It's not even close. And gambling is a part of that. They just do a great job of staying relevant. So they're not going to catch any of my cash on the gambling wire. There's good reason for that. I gave out a hot Dan Mullen pick last week for him to cover at UNLV, and they didn't even get close. Somebody were tweeting at me about that. Like, there's a reason I place like 2 bets a year.
I mean, yeah,
I'm terrible at it.
Look, if you are going to hunt Palmer for betting advice, then that's just on you.
I'm like 500 in SEC games. We talked about that. Not bad.
Yeah, it is bad though because the juice, Hunt. You're losing money.
Well, it's not. It's losing, but it's not bad.
Well,
relatively speaking, nobody's 82%.
No, of course not. I guess that's true. It's not bad. It's just not good.
It's reasonable, and I understand that I'm not smarter than Vegas, and that I can't predict the happenings in sports. And I have my sincere thoughts that most people can't do that, if not all people can't do that. But some people would pull up numbers to try to prove me wrong.
Yes.
I just know my limitations, and they are very much that I can't outsmart Las Vegas and do not have enough disposable income to try. So I won't. But I'm very, very supportive of those of you that want to do that. I'll just do some other things with my time and cash and not gamble it away, because ultimately I will lose it. I would rather play blackjack than watch a game with money on it.
And still lose that money as well.
I will lose that money too. Did not play very much in Omaha, just one night, and I lost.
Yeah, I was disappointed in you.
Real quick.
Disappointed.
At the Ameristar. All right, that's it for a Thursday edition of Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed any of it, catch it on demand. We started with the AJ Haulcy news. In the second hour, talked to Luke Johnson about the Saints. You can find that at Hunt on Saints. Talked to Chris Blair about the Tigers. You can find that at Hunt on LSU. Also, gave 3 matchups to watch. If you want to listen to that, you can on demand. If you like to read about it, you can for free at LouisianaSports.net. I got a column over to LouisianaSports.net. I'm excited for tomorrow's show. I got my pick coming. We're talking SEC football. It's almost game day. We're getting closer to the weekend. That's going to drive you home on AFR. See you tomorrow for Friday edition.
The Hunt Palmer Show.